Hello and welcome to Chapter 15. Chapter 15 will take a look at some of the tools and techniques in analyzing a new business venture. Whether you're an entrepreneur looking at buying an existing business, or perhaps starting a business from scratch, or perhaps whether you're a banker or an investor looking at investing or lending money to a business, it's key for all management to be able to analyze the risks and potential profitability of a business venture or a new opportunity. So in particular in this chapter, we'll take a look at some of the key phases of analysis associated with a new business assessment. We'll take a look at some of the depth and scope of analysis that's required in some of the areas that we need to analyze. We'll take a look at the importance of assessing the operational capacity of a new venture based, as well as compare it to the projected revenue streams to determine the profitability of that business venture. We'll also take a look at some tools to be able to assess the competencies of management, which are essential to operating a successful business. And finally, we'll conclude the chapter with an assessment of the purchase process that goes along with acquiring an existing business. So as we said, one of the most important skills that a manager or an entrepreneur can have is to learn how to analyze a business venture. And these techniques can also be used whether you're an investor, a banker, or somebody that's has an interest in the success of a business venture, whether it's a brand new venture or whether it's an expansion of product lines. These tools can be used in any type of business decision. Entrepreneurs are persons who start a business and they're willing to accept the level of risk associated with investing money in order to make a profit. So key to the ability for any entrepreneur is to be able to analyze the risks and compare the risks to the potential profits that might be generated from that business venture and make a decision whether we should be going ahead with the project or it's something we should stand aside from. So we'll take a look at the 6 phases associated with venture analysis. We'll take a look at market analysis, the concept of value analysis, financial statement analysis, which you've already done from chapter 14, but we'll expand on that a little bit. Operations analysis, management competency analysis, as well as some of the options if you decide to exit the project. And key to this whole assessment process is the ability to understand some of the risks as well as the fatal flaws that could derail us in the early stages of our business. So we'll take a look at some of those fatal flaws. So as we said, key to an assessment of any business venture is understanding the fatal flaws that can derail us in the early stages. Some of those fatal flaws are first of all, an inadequate pricing model being used, which undermines our profitability. We're not able to be competitive, and hence we do not generate the sales results and revenue results that we would have expected. 2 risks are that often accompany a business or a new business venture is, first of all, undercapitalization. Undercapitalization means not having sufficient equity or not having sufficient money, perhaps cash, into the business so that when things get tight, we don't have sufficient flexibility to make our payments as they come due, and can certainly derail us, particularly in the early stages of starting a new business when there's a large level of uncertainty. Management is essential. Strong management is essential to operating any business. And without managers having appropriate skills, or if they lack certain skills or competencies, having the staff and employees who can assist them in those regard, or advisors and accountants and that sort of thing, a management team, can derail a business in early stages. As a banker, management is key to the success of any business. So we'll take a look at some of the tools to help you to assess the management skills of the management team. Another fatal flaw is insufficient market research. Some of the when we make business decisions, we're often based on doing some market research and using that research to then do some financial projections going forward. And if we haven't done an appropriate level of market research and determined the demand and truly understand the demand and the way our customers buy products, that can lead to an incorrect assessment of the potential marketability of a product or the market desirability of a new business venture. So it's important to do your research up front, early on, before undertaking any new business venture. Poor understanding of the industry or the market can also lead to failure when looking at and operating a new business venture. Not just understanding the industry or the markets as they are today, but perhaps future changes in that industry. Is there new regulations coming about? Are there different regulations that are coming about that might affect us? We need to understand those. We need to understand the competitors, do that industry analysis that we talked about in earlier chapters, understanding the market, the way customers behave in that market, the demographics of that market, is key to understanding and making some decisions about future business expansions. Another fatal flaw is the absence of a well-focused execution strategy. So we've talked about the importance of having strategy and having the systems in place to monitor our performance with respect to that strategy at the corporate levels and at the business levels and even at the operational levels. And without having those well-defined, focused tools to assist us in determining whether we're on the right path to success, can lead to a derailment of our business venture. So it's important to have a very clear execution strategy. Once all these are understood in analyzing a business venture, managers then can decide whether any of these fatal flaws that might exist can be overcome and whether they should be proceeding with the decision to invest or expand into that market or into that new business venture. Nothing in business is a certainty. Markets are changing, businesses are changing, regulations are changing, the economy is changing. It's important for an entrepreneur or a business professional to be able to understand the level of risks associated with that level of uncertainty. Sometimes there's a higher level of uncertainty, which might lead to a higher level of risk in analyzing a business venture, and hence the potential for rewards must be a lot higher than something where the level of risk might be lower. We would normally, remember that risk-reward trade-off that we've talked about. The higher the level of risk, the higher the expected future rewards should be, and vice versa. So as an entrepreneur or as a business person and a manager, we need to understand the level of the risks and be able to somehow quantify that risk and determine whether the profitability of the new business venture or the probability of profitability will compensate for the level of risk and is greater than the level of risks. So a key is to understand both the risks as well as the probability of success. And there are different levels of risk based on the type of venture we're taking a look at. For instance, if you're an existing business and you're looking at expanding product line or perhaps expanding into a new market area, that has a lower level of risk per se than getting into a brand new business startup that really hasn't been proven. That would be a higher business risk than just doing an expansion of your existing business. If we're an existing business getting into a new market area, that has another higher level of risk, and sometimes we might start a new business, but there's a proven business model. For instance, in the example of franchises, McDonald's and the Tim Hortons and that sort of thing, there is an element of risk because it's a new venture. It could be a new venture for us, a new business for us, a new market for us. But there is a proven business model. There is a foundation of success through that franchise. So a higher level of risk than if we're already operating an existing business and perhaps even getting into a new market area. And of course, the highest level of risk is something totally new, totally unproven, totally unfounded. So lowest risk is at the left, and the most risk is starting a new business from scratch. So it's important as a manager and entrepreneur to be able to understand the level of risk. As we said, as the level of risk increases, our expected returns should increase as well to compensate for the higher degree of risk. So you'll recall from other courses or maybe one that a franchise really is a business model, usually a proven business model, in which the owners share a common brand and common operating structures through a very defined business framework. It's kind of like a business in the box, where operational methods, products, training, assistance is all provided to the entrepreneur. And it can be a very popular business model to start up a new business. But keep in mind that even a franchise does not guarantee success. So some of the advantages of franchising, of course, are the brand recognition that comes with it. Everybody understands what the Tim Hortons brand is all about, what the McDonald's brand is all about. Business franchises, or good franchises, will provide a turnkey operating plan. I mean, that's the concept of a business in the box. They provide operating structure, operating plans, training, management assistance through when you purchase a franchise. Good franchises will have training programs for not only owners but staff, as well as have management assistance programs if you need assistance in operating your business. One of the advantages through franchising is typically a proven product or proven service in the business. And the franchises, because they have a large number of customers, sometimes you can get some purchasing power through economies of scale. So what that means is, because they're buying in large quantities, often you can take advantages of lower prices for some of the inputs, some of the inventory in the business. Many franchises offer some assistance with your advertising and marketing support. A lot of smaller businesses can't afford to do national TV advertising campaigns, for instance. So by being part of a franchise, they can allocate those costs over a large number of franchisees, and hence each franchisee benefits from some of those larger national marketing campaigns. Franchises that are very progressive will also provide the research and R&D for new products and new processes to gain efficiencies, to increase market share. So as a franchisee, we can sometimes benefit from those activities that are being undertaken by the franchisor. Keep in mind, though, that buying a franchise doesn't come without a price. It can be a pricier way to start a new business. There's an initial franchise fee, and sometimes that's several thousands of dollars. It's not uncommon for franchise fees. Initial fees just to operate the business can go from $50,000 to $250,000. There's also some ongoing royalties, and what royalties are a percentage of the profits, for example, are paid to the franchisor for the use of the franchise name and business model. So it's not an upfront fee, but it's an ongoing fee, which can reduce the profitability of our business. Often with a franchise, there are mandated requirements to pay into the national marketing fund so that the franchisor can develop national advertising and marketing campaigns. There's often initial high upfront cost of the business. And one of the limiting factors of a franchise is that the franchisor has some pretty strict controls. And each of the franchisees, which own a franchise, must adhere to all the restrictions of the business. For example, a McDonald's can't suddenly just start deciding to expand its product line by offering beer or wine with its meals, because that would be restricted by the franchise agreement. And so there's a lot of controls on what you can and cannot do in a franchise that many franchisees might find restrictive. So as we've mentioned, starting a new business venture or embarking on a new project always involves a certain amount of uncertainty. And it's our ability to be able to understand that risk and assess the plan going forward that helps us to mitigate that risk. So a business plan can help a new business venture or an entirely new product line, perhaps, that we're looking at getting involved in. So the first thing to do is create a business plan. And once we've got a business plan developed, we can then embark on assessing the viability of that plan to make sure that it will work to meet our objectives. Successful ventures have three common keys to success. First is to develop a strong understanding of the market, the customers, what's happening in the market, as well as a good understanding of the competition and the competitors that we are going up against. The second is creating a realistic business plan that shows the strategy that's going to be undertaken and can demonstrate the viability of the project. And the third is using some performance metrics, both long-term and short-term, so that we're able to assess the progress with respect to our business plan and ensure that we are on track, and if we're going off track, finding out why and finding ways to get back on plan. So this slide shows some of the common components of a business plan. So a business plan will, of course, describe the business, including a description of the form of legal organization, who the owners are, and would also do an in-depth market assessment, which would include an assessment of the competition in that market, the strengths and weaknesses of each of them. It may include some SWOT analysis of the competition, or we've seen the Porter analysis of the industry that we're going into. Making sure we've got a clearly defined strategy and describing the management of the operation. The business plan will also describe the marketing tactics that are going to be used by the business venture. It's going to certainly include things like financials, projections, ratio analysis, and some metrics to show the viability of those financial projections. And a business plan will highlight the risks and opportunities that are created with the business plan and really explain why the business will succeed. So a business plan can be used by managers in assessing their strategies and helping them assess the risk in a new business venture. A lot of business people have had some great ideas. They sat down, they've done a business plan, but once they've assessed the viability, they may find that that business plan or that project may not make sense to embark on. Your banker will certainly want to take a look at your business plan, whether you're buying an existing business, whether you're starting a new business, embarking on a new business venture, applying for any financial loans from your bank. The business plan is the start to be able to assess the viability of the plan and the potential success and rewards achieving that plan. Keep in mind, a good part of your strategy should be that monitoring. How will you have monitoring in place to ensure that your business plan, that you're on track with your business plan, and how will you take corrective actions if you are offside your business plan? So an easy way to think about, the components of a business plan is to think of the 5 rules of the roads. And the 5 rules of the roads are, first of all, to know your customer, know why you will win in that market against your competitors, and to know how you will win, and know what it will take to win and be successful in your business plan. And certainly you need to demonstrate why others should believe in you, why your plan makes sense, why investors should invest, why bankers should lend to your business. So in the slides to follow, we're going to take a look at the 6 phases of assessing a business plan. So in the next few slides, we'll take a look at the market analysis, something that's called value analysis, analysis of the financial projections, an analysis of the operations in the business plan, some tools to help us assess the competency of management, as well as important to have some exit options to be able to get out or of the business or not proceed. So we'll take a look at those 6 phases of the business plan assessment in the next slides. So the first component of the business plan is to do market analysis, or an assessment of the proposed opportunity that exists in front of us, whether it be a new product launch, whether it be a new business altogether. And it really focuses on the assessment of risk and the uncertainty of entering into that market. So the possible opportunity is assessed in really 4 different ways. The first of all is taking a look at the current market environment. What are the economic conditions? What's going on in the market? We might do the PESTEL analysis of the political, the economic, technological environments that the business is operating within, to really understand the risk of entering into that opportunity, or of undertaking that opportunity. Second is to have a clear and true understanding of the industry and the market sectors. So we might do some SWOT analysis. We might take a look at the industry growth cycles. We might do Porter's 5 forces to analyze the competitive market, to really gain a true understanding of the industry and the market opportunity. Thirdly, we really have to have a strong understanding of our customers. What is the size of the market? Is it large enough? What are the demographics? What's happening in the market? Is this the right target market? What are the buying behaviors of our customers? What will drive customers to change the predetermined purchase decisions? How will we offer them or create a competitive advantage so that the customers will buy from us? What value do customers desire? So we need to have a solid understanding of our customer base. And the fourth component is understanding whether we have a market fit. Do we have a competitive advantage that is sustainable over a long period of time? And what can we offer that others can't? So it's really, the market analysis component is really about assessing the legitimacy of the opportunity that's in front of us, whether it makes sense from those 4 dynamics. So closely related to the market analysis, a value analysis is really about understanding the fit and validating that we in fact do have a competitive advantage or uniqueness in this opportunity that's in front of us. So it's really about understanding the value that we can provide to our customers. So once we've done an analysis of the market and the industry and our competitive analysis, and understand the true value that we can provide by embarking on this new business venture, we can begin to do a financial analysis. And this is a key component of any business plan, is the financial metrics. And to be successful, managers and entrepreneurs need to develop a valid estimate of the capital needs of the corporation, the length of time that's needed to ensure financial stability, as well as the cash requirements which are applicable to the cash operating cycle. And so it really includes an analysis of the potential and the risk-reward trade-offs in 5 areas, that being the revenue, the costs of the organization, some of the benchmark requirements, the cash operating cycle, and something that we're going to call the capitalization well. So we'll take a look at each of these components on the following slides. So this slide is meant to be a study guide for you. You can print it out and follow along. We're going to talk about each of these 5 main components in doing an assessment of the financial metrics of the project on the following slides. So follow along, print this out. It's a good study slide, but we'll explore each of these in depth in the following slides. So let's talk about the first component, which is an assessment of the revenues in our financial projections. So it's, when we're looking at the revenues, it's really about assessing the validity or the assumptions on which the revenue is going to be derived from. So we'll take a look at the potential revenue streams that the organization is adding by embarking on this new venture. We're going to take a look at the sources of revenue within each of those streams, and as well evaluate not just the size of the revenue streams, but what is the growth potential of each of the revenue streams. We also need to have a clear understanding of any effects of interdependencies of the sources of revenues. If one source of revenue dries up, how will that affect other sources, or are they independent? So, and derive from different sources, and help us assess the stability of that revenue stream. We also need to take a look at the price pressures that are in the market that can be that may affect each of our sources of revenue. So one of the best approaches to drawing conclusions with respect to the revenues is, for each revenue stream, deciding upon a potential range of outcomes or probabilities. So for instance, we might have one revenue stream and we might be able to anticipate, with 30% probability this is what will happen, 50% probability that this level of revenues will be obtained, and 20% probability that this level of revenue streams will be obtained, so that we can assess the potential impact on the size of the revenue streams. As well, we need to do some sort of sensitivity or what-if analysis when taking a look at those revenue streams. So what happens if we enter into a recession, in the second year after we start a business plan? What will that do to our revenue streams? We also need to do an assessment of the assumptions. Your revenue model or your revenue projections are going to be based on a certain set of assumptions. Those assumptions should be clearly articulated in the business plan, and we need to do an assessment of the assumptions to determine whether those assumptions are in fact valid or not. Once we've understood the revenues in the organization, we can start to do an assessment of the costs and this cost base and the cost structure in our organization. As we saw in our break-even analysis, it's important to understand the type of costs, what are the fixed costs, what are the floating costs, what are the various components of costs, what are recurring costs versus one-time costs, upfront setup costs. How will those costs increase with inflation? What is our what-if analysis or sensitivity analysis if that might affect those costs? And certainly when we're taking a look at our cost base, we need to understand, do we have a competitive advantage? Is this where we can create a competitive advantage to offer our products or services at lower cost, have lower costs so that we can be more profitable compared to our competitors? We also need to take a look at some of the market volatility. If a big component of our costs are commodities, how will that affect our cost line? What is the outlook for the costs in each of those commodities? Once we've done an analysis and set forth our revenue projections and our cost projections, we can start to do some benchmark analysis. Benchmark analysis might be, for instance, a break-even analysis, doing analysis of the break-even position in the company and whether it's achievable or not, and that we've talked about in the course. We're going to take a look at analysis of cash flow. When does the business start generating positive cash flow? And we'll understand that in a couple of slides. We'll take a look at the capitalization well and how starting a new business venture can affect our cash flows. Taking a look at analysis of the gross profit margin, comparing that to competitors, doing some ratio analysis that we've learned about, taking a look at the operating profit margin, some sensitivity analysis. Do we meet benchmarks? Is our operating profit sufficient enough to make this a successful venture? Doing some sensitivity analysis and comparing perhaps some of the ratios and some of the financial metrics to our competition and industry averages. There's a lot of statistics published out there so that we can compare projected financial ratios to those industry averages to understand whether our business plan makes sense. It's critical when doing an assessment of the business plan is not only to take a look at the profitability, so the revenues and the costs, but also the cash operating cycle, because cash is essential to the success of the business. And we are going to have periods when we start a new business venture of negative cash in the organization. We need to make sure that we have sufficient liquidity and working capital so that we are going to be successful. So do we have sufficient cash on hand to support the business during the initial period of cash outflows? So part of the assessment in the business plan is to determine whether we have sufficient cash reserves to ensure the success of our business. So let's take a look at something that's called the capitalization well in the next slide. So in addition to assessing the financial potential of the business and the profitability, we need to assess the magnitude of the cash and the capital investment that's required. So we need to have a clear understanding of all the startup costs. So that's the initial capital that's required to launch a new business or a new product venture. And the capitalization well is a business model that used to assess the full capital requirements during not only the startup phase, but during the execution phases as well. So it'll take a look at how much cash is required, how long it will take to get to the break-even point, and we start generating a profit and positive cash flow, as well as the potential profits and returns. Undercapitalization is when the company lacks the funding to continue business ventures, and it's one of the main reasons that new business ventures will fail. So by understanding how much capital is going to be required and demonstrating that we have sufficient capital is essential to the evaluation of any business plan. So let's take a look at a graph that kind of shows the concept of the capitalization well. So this slide shows the the concept of capitalization well for a new business venture. So let's take a look at what we mean by capitalization well. This blue line represents sales. So as a new business venture starts, of course, initially through the development of the concept, as well as the development of prototype and doing our assessment, there really is no sales. There's until we launch the product, we will start to see sales, and hopefully that will grow as the business or the concept gains acceptance, and we're able to sustain positive growth in sales throughout the life cycle of the new business venture. So the blue line represents our sales. Of course, after we've launched the product, we are going to have an initial period of cost, and so this red line shows the profitability. So as we can see, initial period, we're going to have negative profitability in the organization until we reach this point here, which really becomes our break-even point in the business. So we need to understand how much cash we're going to need to operate the business until we reach that break-even point. Because after the break-even point, we start to see some profitability that's being generated. This green line shows the cash needs of the business venture. So during the initial concept development and in the research and development phase, as well as in the design of the prototype, we don't have any revenues, we don't have any profits. So the difference is the amount of cash that's going to be required to sustain our business. So we call that the capitalization needs along this green line. And even after we get started in the business and launch our product, we're going to have a period of negative profitability and increased cash flows. But we still need to have sufficient cash on hand to manage through those periods. Even until we've reached sustained profitability and positive cash flows, we need to have sufficient cash on hand just to make our bill payments on time and support the working capital of our business. So we start to see the depth of the capitalization well is how much defines how much capital we're going to need in the business until we've sustained positive cash flow in the company. So this is the amount of capital that we have to be prepared to inject into the business. And over a period of time, hopefully the profitability is such that we can start to perhaps redeem some of the capital or pay back some of the capital that's been invested in our business. So we have to have a clear understanding how much initial capital is going to be needed, how much capital is going to be needed after launch and after startup of the business venture to ensure that we have sufficient funds to be successful. So it's not just the initial startup cost that we have to be prepared to support or inject additional capital. Amazon.com was founded in 1994 and the business was launched in 1995. However, it didn't start to generate a profit until the fourth quarter of 2001. So that was a huge capitalization well that Amazon required to ensure the long-term viability of the organization. Of course, it finally did take off and started generating positive cash outflows sometime after the fourth quarter of 2001. So important to understand the depth of that capitalization well. Part of the assessment of the business plan, of course, is understanding the operations. We need to understand the equipment that's going to be required, the skill levels that's going to be required, the infrastructure. We need to do an assessment of the efficiency of operations and the effectiveness of the operation plan. How are we going to provide training? What is our capacity going to be? What kind of quality control standards will we have? What is our quality control objectives? Are there some pollution controls and pollution issues that we need to consider? Are there some potential impacts on environmental assessments that we need to do? So that all of these things compose part of the assessment of the actual operational part of the business plan. Another key component, and sometimes one of the most important components, is doing an assessment of the competency of management. There's been many good business ideas, many business ventures start, but management has lacked the competency and all the skills to be able to execute the business plan and ensure success. So we need to have a solid understanding of the competency of management, the skills that they're bringing, and if there is a lack of skills, if management doesn't have the skills, how are they going to supplement those? Perhaps they can use the services of accountants and lawyers and perhaps bankers to bring in some of the skills sets that they may be lacking. You need to do an assessment of the commitment of the management team to the business, as well as the investors and the owners. Do they have sufficient resources? Do they have leadership skills? So understanding the competency of management can help us decide whether the business is viable, or the business plan is viable or not. A tool to help us understand the competencies and the abilities of management is something that's called the MERFS analysis. So the MERFS analysis is a multi-dimensional, five-dimensional analysis of the management ability. The first component takes a look at the motivation of the business. Do they have that desire to excel? Are they true entrepreneurs? Do they have the commitment to the business? Do they have the technical skills? Do they have sufficient support and knowledge to be able to operate this business? Have they operated in similar industries or similar business ventures that have been successful? Are they able to make the decisions? Do they have the relationships? So that's the networking, the relationships with accountants and lawyers or advisors or consultants, so that they can supplement their skills to be successful. Do they have relationships with potential customers already? Do they have a network and relationship with some of the suppliers that are critical to the success of our business? Do they have the proper focus? So have they developed a clear vision and strategic plan? Do they have a rifled approach, or rifle focus, which is very specific, or more of a shotgun approach, which is kind of all over the place, hoping something will stick? So that they have a clear focus and strategic direction and leadership and vision. And the final component is skin in the game. Do they have the monetary commitment? Are they able to commit the time to the business venture? Are they willing to, do they have the talent? Do they have do they take accountability for the success of the business venture? So by doing a MERFS analysis, we can get a clearer picture of how strong the management team is, and hence assess the viability of the new business venture. Critical to a business plan is also taking a look at exit strategies. So there may not be an intended exit plan from the business. But what type of conditions would trigger an exit strategy? Think of it as a plan B. So if our revenue targets or our profitability targets do not materialize, what is the contingency plan? What is the plan strategy to get back on track? Or what is the plan strategy to sell off the business or part of the business if the business is not successful? And what does that exit strategy look like? So that exit strategy might be plan B to get back on track. It might be a planned sale of the business once a certain level of profitability is achieved. Many entrepreneurs purchase existing businesses, turn them around, and then resell them. So we need to understand if there is an intended exit strategy so that we can assess the viability of the business until we reach that exit point. So let's take a look at the acquisition process when buying an existing business. Acquisition of an existing business typically involves 5 steps. The first is to identify the target. Find a potential candidate that we might be buying. The second is assessing the fit, or doing some due diligence of the operational strategies, the cost savings, cultural fit of the two organizations when buying an existing business. Once we've done that, and there is a true fit, determining the price. What is a fair price to purchase that business? By taking a look at things like our PE ratios, the EBITDA, the working, the weighted average cost of capital calculations, gross profit margins, revenue forecasts, cash flow analysis, and typically from a finance concept, the price of the business should be the net present value of all the expected future profits of the business. Then negotiating and making the purchase. And the final step is integrating the existing operation perhaps into our new business venture. Critical to understand that the cash flow needs, as we saw in our capitalization well, is going to be significant, and understanding whether we're going to be able to support the business through that period of cash outflows by having sufficient capital to inject in the company. Well, most of our assessment has been so far based on for-profit organizations. Not-for-profit organizations also have to seek out new opportunities and able to grow. So historically, not-for-profits have really relied on external funding sources, the government and agencies that give grants to organizations to cover their operating expenses. But there's a lot more pressure on those sources of revenue. So not-for-profit teams really have to focus on potential new revenue streams, for instance, possibly from the private sector. And they really have to have a good understanding of their operating and administrative efficiencies, and making sure that they have sufficient cash flow, just like any for-profit business. So balancing act is really seeking additional revenue streams through perhaps the development of new products and services, and while at the same time making sure that those are consistent with their mission statements. So many of the assessments that we've talked about for-profit organizations will also apply to not-for-profit organizations as well, with a different slant. So once we've done an analysis of the management, we've done an analysis of the financial impact, understood the capitalization well, done an understanding of the market assessment, the operations of the business opportunity, we need to get to a point where we make a decision whether this is something that we should be proceeding with or not. One of the tools that can assist us is something that's called the market or opportunity pyramid, which is a series of 5 questions And if we are able to answer all those 5 questions with a yes, then this is something we should probably take a look at proceeding. But it's important to get to that point and make a conscious decision whether we are going to proceed with the business venture or not. So not just looking at the financial components, but looking at the overall strategy. Does this provide a fit into our existing business, or does it make sense for us to proceed with? So let's take a look at the market opportunity. So here's the market opportunity pyramid. So it starts at the basic, is understanding whether there's a true market, and is the timing right to get into that market? Do we have a clear understanding of the customer and the buying behaviors of our customers? Are the market and financial characteristics strong enough to result in success? Do we have sufficient cash and capital to invest in this business to ensure the viability? Is the business systems and operations properly structured? And can the management team make it happen? If the answer to any of those 5 questions is no, we should probably not be proceeding or do some further investigation analysis in those areas. If the answers are yes, then perhaps this is a good market potential or market opportunity for us to explore, and we should proceed with the business venture. So just a review of some of the core concepts of that's included in this chapter. So hopefully these are some of the tools that will help you to be able to analyze a new business venture and make a decision whether you should be proceeding with it or not.